Hello and welcome to episode 35 of the Ski Instructor podcast. I hope you're well. My name's Dave Burrows and I'm the director and owner of SnowPro Ski School based here in Val d'Illier in Switzerland. Since the last episode of the podcast, episode 34, that was recorded at the end of April, a lot of the ski resorts have the ski season has come to an end now, but there's a few odd things popping up. I noticed Avoriaz was open the other day. I noticed Tignes is opening fairly soon. There's obviously skiing going on in Zermatt, and it's actually not that long until the glaciers of Saas-Fee and the summer ski season on the glaciers really starts to happen. So yeah, it's almost like a year-round enterprise really now for many people in our industry. This episode, I've got an interview that's a bit more grassroots than previous episodes. I talked to John Greenwood, who runs a dry ski centre in a place called Silksworth, which is in the northeast of England. We talk fairly extensively about that in this interview, and it was really, really nice to get a completely different perspective on skiing from the usual interviews, which are based on people who are out here in the mountains. So I really very much enjoyed this interview and how it was to hear about the sort of the grassroots scene and how it all is right at the beginner level of the sport, and also in the UK where essentially there is no snow. In this first half, we talk about John's growing up, school ski trips to Norway, how he got involved in the ski industry in the first place. We talk about Snow Sports England, we talk about the UK dry slope sort of scene, and touching on sort of training instructors internally within his centre. So enjoy the first half, and I will catch you somewhere in the middle. John Greenwood, welcome to the Ski Instructor podcast. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you very much for having me, Dave.
Likewise. I hope all is well with you. We got in touch because I've seen you around and about on Facebook, but I wanted to get a really good perspective on dry slope skiing and the UK scene with regards to that, and I deliberately didn't want to talk too much. We've had the last few podcasts have been quite sort of Basie centric, and I wanted to get a little bit away from that, and I wanted to get more into kind of grassroots skiing and see what that was, what that looks like at the moment now that we're all coming out in the UK, coming out of the lockdown and hopefully forever. So you currently run the Silksworth Dry Slope Centre, and that's in the northeast of England, and hopefully, with respect to you, hopefully our listeners in the US and stuff will be able to understand your accent.
I hope so.
but tell me a little bit about that. How did you get into skiing, and how did you end up where you are now?
Yeah. Okay. So I guess a little bit kind of cliche. I guess a lot of people got involved with skiing. I got involved with skiing through school ski trips. So here in the northeast of England, we had a ski trip that ran for many years, which was organised by the educational board in Northumberland.
Uh-huh.
So it was classed as an educational trip. But it was a kind of a extra to the kind of the outward bound centres and things like that we used to have around Northumberland and in the north of England, things like that. Uh-huh. So I got involved in these school ski trips, travelling across to Norway.
Okay.
So there was quite a strong connection with the northeast in a resort called Voss in Norway, which is on the west coast of Norway.
What was that? Sorry, what was that connection? Because there is because there is a connection, isn't there, between Norway, Scandinavian countries, and the northeast because of the Vikings and stuff. That goes back a long way. There's still places in the northeast, isn't there, where you can pick up, like in the language and stuff. That's
correct.
There's a bit of Norse here and there, isn't there?
Yeah. So I believe it was started. The trip was this adventure started in about 1971 by a gentleman called George Slee, who I think at the time was looking to expand the outward sort of bound sort of trips and things that was available to children around the northeast and around Northumberland. And so he happened upon this resort in Voss in Norway, which actually is not very far at all. It's about a 1 hour 20 sort of flight, Newcastle into Bergen, and then you're up the coast from Bergen into Voss. So it was very easily accessible for people to get there.
That's so good, because when I went on my first school ski trip, we were 24 hours on a coach to Austria.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. I don't know how teachers actually manage to kind of put up with the kids.
I know. It's unbelievable. Can you imagine? Yeah.
And that was always a massive advantage for this trip to Norway. The fact that you met at the airport in Newcastle, and then within 3.5 4 hours you were in resort.
That's amazing. Yeah.
So, and it's a small resort. It's not huge. Monday to Friday, there was nobody else there. It was kind of like a private resort for these Northumberland kids. And it was a fantastic sort of opportunity for them. I mean, over the years, so last year was probably the last year that some of the kids managed to go, and then COVID's kind of put a bit of a block on it. Hopefully we can kind of revive it a little bit. But, thousands and thousands of children from the northeast and surrounding sort of areas have gone on this trip. And I still bump into people now who kind of, who have been on those trips, and it's the only ski trip they've ever done, but they still love, they love the experience, and they still sort of remember all those sort of times they had out there.
Yeah.
So that's how I started. I went on these trips, and I was kind of lucky. One of the big advantages also was because it was run by the educational board.
Yeah.
If you were from at the time, if you're from a lower income sort of family, there was support there, so you didn't have to pay the full sort of amount for the trip.
Amazing. Yeah.
So thankfully, for my parents, I guess at the time, I qualified to get to be able to go there on this sort of reduced sort of fee. Went across to Norway. First time I'd flown, first time away from home. I was 12. I had my 13th birthday when I was out there. Cool. And that's what hooked. I was hooked at that point.
Yeah.
So then I went on several of these trips. I got friendly with the kind of the guy who was running the ski school. Found out about how to take sort of instructor courses and things like that out in Norway.
Oh, wow.
And then I left school at 16. I took a ferry across to Norway when I was 16, just before Christmas. I did an instructor course out there. And thankfully I passed.
In English?
It was in English, yeah. It was in English. I passed that course, thankfully. And then there was a job at the end. So then I was out. So that was the kickstart of my sort of skiing career. And I spent 8 seasons out there. Back and forward in Norway. Had some totally amazing experiences. Made, as you do in ski instruction, made a lot of contacts and things that helped me further on in my career. Do you know what I mean? So it was, that was how it all started.
How did you? There's a couple of things come out of that, because my experience was similar. So I did this sort of so I learned to ski. Someone was running as a school ski trip, whoever these kind of heroes were from the past, right, that were pushing skiing through schools. Yeah. I don't know whether that still happens as much as it used to, but whoever these people were, thank you so much for kind of helping me find my way, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And but do you? The first question would be like, do you have any? I don't have many memories of that trip. Like, I remember the accommodation. I remember bunking in with like a few of my mates and stuff like that. And I remember being on the mountain. Like, I've got a vague memory of following some dude around, right?
Yeah.
And the kind of the being in the snake and the sensation of skiing. That's all I've got. I don't really have many, and apart from the mega long coach journey, like looking out of the window, looking at Germany rolling by, like, oh my god, not being able to sleep. That was they're the memories I've got, but it was enough to hook me in.
Yeah.
And what memories do you have from your first trip over in Norway?
I don't know if this is simply because I ended up spending so much time there, so winter. But I remember every single piece of it. I remember getting to the airport. I remember the flight. I remember the bus journey from the airport up into the resort. Driving along the fjords and things. I remember the accommodation that we stayed in. We stayed in a youth hostel, which is on the lakeside, in a really sort of picturesque sort of area. I remember the first ride at the cable car, which was a kind of, at the time, was one of these sort of Wet Eagles Dare type cable cars, built in the 60s.
Yeah.
I remember meeting the instructors, as you do, again, cliche, fall in love with. We had a female instructor called Jill. I fell in love with her, as you do.
Yeah.
That sort of stuff. In fact, I'm still friends with her now. we still have contact with her. She was my first ever ski instructor.
Amazing.
But then, every little bit about it. I remember the skis that I was using. I think, and that's possibly why I got hooked, because everything was new. I didn't come from a particularly sporty family. I'd never done any skiing before, so everything was just, I took it all in as kind of a wide-eyed sort of kid. Just everything, and I knew from that week this was something that I was wanting to do again and again and again. I knew that it wasn't going to be. I wasn't going to do one trip and then I would never do this again. Yeah. Whether or not it was going to become a career. But I definitely knew that it was something I wanted to kind of pursue.
It must have been amazing, wasn't it, for those kids, especially say those maybe from like say we're getting support or whatever, might have been from a slightly less well-off background or whatever. Getting on a plane. For a start, and then going to a different country, speak a different language, everything's new, everything's different. It must have been just like, your eyes must have been on sticks. Oh, absolutely. When you were out there.
I wouldn't be surprised if some of them that is still the one trip that they've ever been on. And that's probably why it sticks in so many people's sort of memories. And so it was a fantastic opportunity, an unbelievable opportunity. And for a lot of, up until, like we say, till the COVID kicked in, I was still heavily involved in kind of still trying to promote these trips, and I used to and trying to kind of encourage new schools to get involved. And we used to run some inspection trips where we'd take teachers across and try and show them around, encourage them to kind of get schools involved. And schools are still keen if you can find the right teacher within them.
That's the issue, isn't it? Like I think the if you think back to those days, like the sort of the way that safetyism has sort of come into our culture now, like it's very difficult for teachers to kind of branch out and do new stuff now. Because, like you say, it requires these inspection trips. You can't just go into stuff blind with a group of kids like you might have done 20, 30 years ago, right?
Yeah, and I think the overall responsibility of a teacher to stand up and say, I'll take responsibility for these 50 kids and I'll stick them on a plane. I'll take them to another country. Yeah. It's a big ask, and I think somewhere it needs to be made a little bit easier for these people to be able to do this, because I think the actual benefits of what children get out of these trips, and it doesn't have to be a skiing trip. It could be any sort of trip, really. Yeah. But the benefit of getting away from the norm, getting out of the first time you leave your parents, you become the independence that you have to kind of that you're exposed to. I think okay, they may miss 1 week of school, but what they gain from the trip, I think they gain so much from these trips.
Yeah, 100%. Like it's amazing actually. This sort of, I'm seeing it now, and I bang on this podcast about my own daughter, but like the concept that we talk about often, and it's tough as a parent, right? It's tough like to let go. You know, you're gradually, as a kid grows, it's a process of letting go and giving them more and more and more independence. And there's a kid over the road here who skis for Ski Valet. He's a good skier and he's rated. He's good lad as well. Nice family, nice people. And he's just like, so here in Switzerland, you can get yourself like an old Suzuki Jimmy, and they have like a Jimny or whatever it is, and they convert them somehow. So they're like just like 30 km/h rated cars.
Okay.
And this kid's 14, and he's like getting in his car, put his skis on the roof, and going off to training in this car. Wow. He's 14. I'm like, bloody hell, that's not that far away. It's like 10 years away. You know, my daughter could be doing this or riding one of them little, you know, what do you call it? Little motorbikes that have got the, you know, lawnmower engine in it or something. Like that's, you see that around here all the time. And it's, like you say, it comes quick. But
it does.
But it's so valuable for kids to say, no, you know, I'm not here to pick up after you. I'm not here to do this. You do it yourself. You work it out. Call me if you've got a real problem, but otherwise you do it. You be independent. Yeah. You know, it's good for them. It's really important.
It is, and I think also, you know, we are so sort of risk averse, you know, we, in terms of not letting our children possibly, you know, obviously we keep them safe and we don't want anything to happen to the children, but
for sure,
we've almost gone the opposite side of that, where we try to kind of mitigate all the risks out of life, to everything sanitized to the point where, you know, children aren't exposed to kind of these are sort of, you know, to experiences that they kind of allows them to develop and to grow and to kind of, you know, to reach potential, I guess.
Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day. I was thinking about that when I was growing up and stuff. And I used to just go out the door, like in a place called Enfield in North London, which is not the nicest area, but it was, you know, it was all right. I wouldn't do it now necessarily in the way it's changed, but I used to be gone all day. My mum wouldn't know where I was.
No.
You know, just somewhere around.
As long as you were back before the lights came on and everybody was happy.
And you think, like, I wonder if you do that now. You know, like, the kids here take themselves off to school. So when Zoe's 5, you can sign up for a bus or whatever, and the bus stops outside, you know, the school bus or whatever. And, you know, they just jump on the bus and they're gone, you know, for the day. And you see that quite a lot. You see kids walking to school in a little yellow thing and they just sort of take themselves, you know, but it's, God, I don't... From a parent's point of view, you're like, oh my God, I don't know whether I'm going to be able to do that. It's quite extraordinary. What were your first impressions? So you remember it vividly, because I've skied in Norway, and I've skied in Kvitfjell, and it was, I love the way that the hills are a bit more, how would you say, like a bit more Scottish, you know, like they're a bit more rounded off. You've got that sort of northern light that you get only in the north, you know, like where I don't know how to describe it. It's a bit softer, and the hills are a bit more round. You know, it's more hills than it is. You know, it's not like going to Chamonix or whatever. Everything's jagged and horrible and scary looking. It's. What were your impressions of Norway when you first went on those first few trips?
I guess in terms of the sort of the scenery and the kind of the feel and the look is very similar to what you just explained. I think what I noticed was how welcomed we were when we went across there. You know, the people were very sort of friendly people. They were very, and the fact that, you know, when we went, which would be the late 90s sort of thing, everybody wanted to kind of have a bit of a chat to you because you were English, and everybody wanted to kind of maybe practice their English a little bit with. Honestly, you know, you always felt comfortable.
Would they be able to understand a bunch of guys from the northeast? Like they must have, like, wow, this is quite difficult. Yeah, I'm only teasing you about your accent, but like, crikey.
No, that's okay. But I think, you know, you've got to imagine that there was probably between like 1,000 and 1,200 kids every sort of winter that used to go across this small town. So the chances are we probably rubbed off on them. There's probably,
I was going to say.
There's probably a Geordie accent going around us right now.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. That's really cool. The people are lovely, though, aren't they? Norwegians.
They're extremely nice people. And I think one of the things, another thing that we noticed was just how quiet it was. We kind of, coming from sort of the northeast Newcastle sort of area, and then you go into, the first time you're kind of in the mountains, and like I say, Monday to Friday, you're pretty much the only people on the mountains. Yeah. Just the kind of the actual sort of the quietness of the whole thing, how sort of secluded, not secluded is not the right word, but you are exposed to the elements, I guess, just being out there in the mountains that we, at the time, not many of us would have experienced before, really. Yeah.
No, I'm with you. I was surprised when I went to Kvitval, sorry Norwegian listeners if I'm butchering your language, but I was surprised how little infrastructure there was there. It's not like going to, I don't know, it's not like going to one of the big French resorts or something like that. It was like, here's a little hut at the bottom, maybe a hotel or whatever it was. But the rest of it is like get on the mountain and that's that. Like there wasn't, there's a couple of little restaurants and stuff, but it wasn't to the scale that you get in the European Alps.
No. I think a lot of Norway is like that, where they have lifts, and like you say, that they may have a small hotel, a small amount of infrastructure at the bottom. There's not many places what you would call an actual resort as such. They do seem to be sort of smaller sort of ski hills, or there's not. They're not the purpose-built sort of resorts that you may find around the Alps and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Where we were in Voss, where we went on the trips and where I used to work, that was a town. So it was, and quite a lot of students go to this town to study, and there's a lot of farming around. So it was more kind of a working town that had a resort with it. It wasn't, it was kind of almost two separate things.
Yeah. So you went there then after these trips, you went there, you qualified as an instructor there, and you went there as a guy, and you got, you scored yourself a job, you're a ski instructor now.
Yeah.
Who were you teaching there? Were you teaching English tourists or?
Yeah, predominantly it was, so then I was teaching the kids that I used to be.
Oh, cool. Amazing.
So we probably had about a 10-week season with about 100 kids each week.
Wow.
They used to travel in. Wednesday was travel day, so they'd arrive on the Wednesday. You'd teach from the Thursday to the following Wednesday. Tuesday. Then you'd always have Wednesday off, which was quite a nice day to have off, because it was, again, then there was even less people on the mountain because there was no kids there at all. So you always had a good day to kind of ski around and things like that.
Yeah.
So that predominantly that was what the majority of the teaching was, and I actually work with somebody now who he returned back to the UK and he works for me now at the ski school, but I used to work with him out in Norway as well, and we laugh about it. It was, at the time we used to grumble and say, somebody's giving me a private lesson during the lunch break.
Yeah.
And, he's saying, I don't want to do this. I was ready to have an hour off. We used to do 2 hours teaching in the morning, 2 hours teaching in the afternoon, and that was it. We did 4 hours a day.
Yeah.
We did 6 days a week. It was the easiest, most enjoyable job I've ever had. But you don't realise it till you look back. It was, it was just, we couldn't have set it up, and we couldn't have had a better sort of employment. It was a perfect sort of job to have.
Ah, cool. That's really, really cool. So what was from these halcyon days where you did nice cruisy weeks and stuff like that, where did your journey take you after that?
So like I said, I did that for a number of seasons, and then I met my then to be sort of wife and realised that I probably need have a little bit more income, because during the sort of summers I just used to bum around a little bit, things like that, as you do at that age. So what I realised was I could then maybe do some teaching during the summer as well. So I had a little trip up to Sunderland, where I am now, to the ski slope. I had a bit of a ski around, and while I was there was some advertisement up saying that there was going to be some instructor courses running.
Okay.
And I thought, well, I'm already an instructor, but this might be a good way of kind of getting a foot in the door.
Yeah.
So I spoke to some of the staff there. They explained that, the instructors here got quite well paid, things like that. And I thought, well, this could work. Spend winters in Norway, summers in Sunderland. So that's what I did. I enrolled on that instructor training course, which was the first sort of my first sort of steps into Snow Sports England coaching scheme.
Yeah.
At the time, it was called a club instructor.
Yeah.
I did that club instructor training, and again, one of the guys who was kind of helping out with on the training, turned out to be the then ski school coordinator, and I had a little chat with him and said, would there possibly be any work available? And he said, yeah, we can give you an interview and see, and that's kind of how it started. So I started teaching in the summers at the ski slope here, the dry ski slope, and then winters out in Norway.
Oh, amazing! Wow. Okay, and then so your progression to be as qualified as you are now, was that through Snow Sports England, or is
was?
So you've gone all the way through that system? I
did, yeah. So, like I said, at the time, because I had a Norwegian qualification, I probably could have missed out a few steps.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm not even sure why I did it, but I just felt like I wanted to start at the beginning and work through the whole scheme. Almost like I kind of feel sometimes that you have to earn some things. That I just want to kind of, take something. I wanted to kind of earn it, and I want to get involved in the system. So I took, at the time, you did a club instructor, which was the entry level sort of instructor sort of qualification for Snow Sports England.
Yeah.
And then after that, I think the next year I took an ASSI, which was an artificial ski slope instructor.
Yeah.
I did that, and I kind of used that qualification for a while, and then I realised that the more that I was teaching on the dry ski slope and the more involved I was getting with the clubs and that sort of thing, I wanted to really sort of progress and kind of get a little bit more sort of education. So then I did, it was called an artificial ski, with an ASP. Oh, yeah. It's all changed. This is a long time ago. It was an artificial ski slope, artificial performance ski slope instructor, I think it was.
Okay.
ASP.
Right.
Something along those lines. It was an abbreviation, and so that was with Snow Sports England, it tends to start off an instructional and then it moves into more coaching.
Yeah. Okay.
And this was the first sort of step in the instructional sort of pathway. And then from that, then I did what was then classed as a development coach, which later turned into the level 4, which they have now. They've moved into a 4-tier sort of system, kind of similar to what a lot of instructional sort of...
so the system now goes 1, 2, 3, 4?
It does, yeah.
And we should explain to everyone who doesn't really know how this works. So within snow sports in the UK, you've also got... I think you've got Snow Sports Scotland, you've got Snow Sports England, presumably the Welsh have their own as well, and the Irish have their own. And so for those who don't really know, like, what would be the difference between those and, say, the British Association, who are also, active in the UK? Yeah,
so Snow Sports England is the national government body for skiing within England.
Okay.
So it gets government funding. So the funding comes from Sport England, and it works on a 4-year cycle. So they put a bid in every 4 years to get then money is moved to the association, to Snow Sports England, and then so their role is to develop skiing all the way from grassroots through to performance.
I'm with you. Yeah.
And that's the same for Snow Sports Wales, Snow Sports Scotland, and the Irish, not the Irish Association as in IASI.
Yeah.
So that they work separate to what sort of what BASI would be. BASI being a member association for accrediting sort of ski instructors, what we class as sort of professional ski instructors.
Yeah.
Snow Sports England is more based around club-based instructors or sort of team coaches, that sort of thing.
Okay, all right, I'm with you. All right, and so what I think we'll come back to where you're working now, a bit later on. But what I'd really like to know a bit more about is let's talk about the sort of the dry slope scene in the UK, if you like, because I think it's important. It's where I learnt how to ski. So I learnt how to ski on Hemel Hempstead dry slope just before I went on that initial school trip. So the school did like a little bit of kind of prep, so that you weren't completely green when you finally got out to Austria. And there were dry slopes all over the country, right? I remember skiing in Hemel. I remember going skiing in Gosling, in Welling, and various other places. But there are dry slope skiing all over the UK before the advent of the kind of the indoor snow centre and stuff like that, and they're still hugely popular because I speak to Phil Brown all the time, and he's always at like random places in the UK skiing on a dry slope, and I'm like, wow, I didn't even know these places were existing.
Yeah, I think there's still currently about 60 slopes in the country.
That's amazing.
Dry ski slopes, and then I think there's probably 7 indoor slopes, something like that.
Right.
So they are still hugely popular, and they range from slopes that may be 30 metres long into slopes like Hill End, which is 400 metres long. Yeah. So there's a huge sort of range of different sort of facilities around. Yeah. But and they all run on a slightly different sort of, in different sort of ways. So some are completely club-based, where it'll be run by volunteers. Some are run by local authorities. Some are run by private companies. They all have a different sort of model of running these facilities. Yeah. But they all kind of facilitate the same sort of need for people to be able to learn how to ski and to develop, and we're developing people on these ski slopes from complete beginners into people who are national, hitting sort of national teams and things like that. The actual the quality of the people that it's producing is quite unbelievable, really, and also the actual enthusiasm that people have around these centres again is phenomenal, really. There is a little bit of snobbery, and you hear it sometimes, on social media and things like that, where people don't come because it's not real skiing, it's plastic, and it's it's dangerous, it hurts when you fall over, it's not the same sensation, it's not. But these facilities are. If you take just our slope, for example, on a weekend we have a grassroots club called the Polar Bears Club, which a lot of sort of centres have. We have over 250 children on a Saturday and a Sunday going through a coaching scheme.
Wow.
And that's week in, week out, without fail.
That's amazing.
Whether it's 25 degrees warm or it's hailstone and wind blowing, these kids turn up week in, week out with the parents and ski. And that's
incredible.
And that's not just us. That happens across the country.
Yeah. And so each one of these, each one of the dry slope centres has presumably, I'm guessing, right, so correct me if I'm wrong, so I'm guessing it has like a club, like a sort of weekend club or something like that, like you would do if you're interested in football, right? You sign up and you go to your own local club or whatever, and then I'm guessing it also has the ability to kind of do private lessons and stuff like that, as you would in any kind of regular ski school. And then also I'm guessing after school or after work in the evenings during the week, there's also a whole bunch of other kind of supplementary things, maybe like the race club or something like that, that goes on, so that you've kind of got something going on most of the time.
Yeah, that's exactly. I mean, that's exactly sort of the model that we run here at Sunderland. So we have a team of instructors, and we offer private tuition, whether that be skiing or snowboarding. And then we have, like you say, we have the club structure. So generally, once people have had a few lessons, they can then join these clubs and stay long term and join a sort of a development pathway. And then from that club, which is, I guess, what we call our sort of internal club, we then signpost them into the external sort of clubs. So we have a very successful sort of race club here set up, and then we have some freestyle clubs and snowboard clubs and things like that. So we move them into the more specific sort of clubs once they feel that they're ready for that sort of development sort of pathway. They're ready for that next sort of stage. And it all ties together well. It all looks good.
We've been trying to do that here. I'm very conscious with my ski school not to get away from our core business, and I have so many ideas that I like. I'm looking at my chart here. Like, I've got a whole bunch of ideas already for next season, which I need to get going with, to be honest. But I'm very conscious not to move away from our core product, which our core product is teaching people how to ski in like a private lesson environment. But you get kids to a certain level, and that just doesn't cut it anymore. So what you've got to do is that you've got to kind of have, like you say, some outlets for them, right? And so one of the things that we launched last year, which we're going to be doing, definitely rolling out because it was so successful last year, is put in place like a freestyle club, and maybe a race club or something. So you've got some channel for these excellent young skiers that we produce to go into, depending on what their interest is, right? And so I'm guessing you've got the same setup, or you're telling me that you've got the same setup where you are.
Yeah, and it works exactly like that. So we almost need these clubs, this sort of race club or the freestyle club, to draw them first of all into the lessons, and then through our sort of what you call our sort of grassroots club, and then into these sort of speciality sort of areas. And it all feeds off each other. So yes, the race club and the freestyle club need us to do the beginner lessons, but we need those clubs to exist to give somebody an aim to move towards, like almost like a pathway to aim at. And as long as everybody kind of buys into it and is pulling in the same direction, we have quite a good sort of movement through the centre and through the clubs. It's been working for quite a while, and then what we also find is we end up with children, or at a certain point, who maybe aren't as competitive or have been competitive and have stopped competing and things, and then they're still looking to stay within the sport. And generally, they end up becoming sort of the instructor team. We end up kind of running instructor courses, and these. So we have people who are working here now who have been members of a club when they were maybe 6 years old, who are now instructors at the slope. And they've been through the whole system, so they know exactly how the slope runs, what the kind of the systems are in place, what the sort of the philosophy of the centre is. And then once they've qualified as an instructor, they're ready just to step in and to carry on.
Oh, that's really cool, isn't it? Like, so you've got something for everyone, and you've got a continuity of like tradition and what would you call it, like the values, like those young instructors are learning from the old boys and girls, and they take that, as long as you kind of keep that, as long as you've got a fair idea of what your values are, you can keep that going all the way through your instructor team, right?
Yeah, and this also is one of the benefits of the Snow Sports England sort of coaching scheme, because it's very much sort of facility based, shall we say? So you would do, if you would do your training. So let's say it was a level 1 or level 2 training, which would be a set amount of hours, normally a weekend sort of course. But then you have a workbook that you have to kind of complete, and part of that workbook is about how the centre runs. What are the, all things from what are the health and safety sort of procedures that you have at the centre, who are the your point of contacts at the centre, So by the time they get through their training, and they have to also log a certain amount of hours.
Yeah.
So they have to do a minimum of 20 hours actual on the hill with the instructor. So we break that down to thirds, where the first third is just watching lessons. Second third is you starting to maybe do a few demonstrations for the instructor, and the third part of that training would be you start to deliver parts of the actual lesson and things like that. So by the time they come at this training, you have somebody who's site-specific trained. You don't have to bring somebody in and then train them in the systems of the centre. These people have already gone through a process which allows them to be. It's almost like a short apprenticeship. So they're ready. They're ready for work once they're qualified.
That's really cool, isn't it? Like that's always one of the most difficult things when we bring on. I'm so lucky because I've got a complete returning team for next year. And like no one new and no one, and in fact, I've got a new guy coming on board. Hi, Dave, if you're listening. But he already knows the area, and this is one of the biggest kind of when you're bringing new people on board. And I suppose that applies to you as it does to me, in that there's certain tips and tricks that apply to any local resort that you've got to know in order to be able to, either ski it effectively or know how it all works. That kind of thing. Which lift is best to go to with this level of skier? Where's the little cut through, which means I can avoid the steep bit of this particular slope. All those kind of local things that you need to know in order to deliver a really, really quality session for your client, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's always great to get somebody new in, like we do here at times. You get an outsider in, there come with some new ideas and things like that. But like going back to what you say, having a team that knows how things run and what the systems are and how, just it makes everything a lot smoother. And you then. Not that you ever want a kind of a very strict product, but you have an identity, I guess, of what you kind of deliver.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. Oh, that's cool. That's really, really good. When did you so you're in charge of the centre? How did that all come about? Like, how did you end up in your lofty position of power?
Kind of a longish story, but I'll try and make it fairly quick. So
I've got all day, mate. You carry.
When I got involved, obviously teaching here, it was at the time it was run by a local authority, by the local council. It was owned and run by the local authority. So they had a position in place which was the ski school coordinator. So the gentleman who was in that position, circumstances changed, so he left, and they said, "John, would you be interested in kind of doing this role?" And I said, yeah, I would. That's kind of a good sort of progression for me. So I did that role, and I very quickly realised, I think at the time I did it for probably maybe about a year, and I very quickly realised that working for a local authority with all the red tape and all that was extremely frustrating, to the point where it actually it put me off skiing. That side of things soured the instruction side of things, and I took a step back. I said, this is not for me. I don't want to be involved. And I actually left and joined the family business. Okay. And I did that for about 10 years. Yeah. But during that time, I didn't stop coaching. Yeah. So I was always involved with the race team here. Mm-hmm. So even though I wasn't instructing on a day-to-day basis, I was always here on club nights, still coaching with the club. Mm-hmm. And then I got more involved also with actually tutoring and delivering instructor courses. Yeah. So that's kind of what I did. So alongside working for the family business, I did that for about 10 years. So I was tutoring courses. I was sort of developing and running the coaching program with the race club. And so I kept in all the time I never let my sort of connections with Snow Sports England fall away. I just fell away from the slope. Yeah. Yeah. And then what happened was, like a lot of sort of local authorities in the UK, they decided to put it out to tender for an external company to run. Yeah. on their behalf. So the company that I work for now, Everyone Active, they were the successful bidders. They took over running the centre, and they very quickly realised that they needed somebody actually in a position to be able to drive the ski sort of side of things. Because at the facility here we have football, outdoor football pitches, these 3D pitches, and we have a athletics field and as a sort of a whole complex. But they very quickly realised that they needed somebody a bit more specific to the ski side of things. They couldn't just have a normal centre manager. So they advertised the job as a, at the time it was still classed as a ski school coordinator, and I applied for that job, and I was successful in getting that. So I did. That was about 5 years ago now. And since then, the role's developed into, I have a title of general manager. So sounds very big and grand. It's not, but it sounds. So that's how I kind of ended up being in the position that I am now, and it's probably the best sort of step that I've done, really, because it allows me so much sort of freedom to develop the ski slope here, to develop the instructors. It gives me much more contact with Snow Sports England and other sort of external sort of ski clubs and groups and things like that. So it's been a really good sort of step for me. It kind of came at the right time, if that makes sense.
Sometimes these things are meant to be, right? I hope you enjoyed the first half of the interview with John. I had a lovely chat with him, and I think there was really good chemistry in this interview, and I very much enjoyed speaking to him. So since I last recorded a podcast, some information from the Canton Valais here in Switzerland has landed on my desk, and it looks like everyone has now finally realised that Brexit is happening. So we've got. I've got a letter here, sitting here from Switzerland, in effect, that says now that the UK is a third-party country, ski instructors can no longer come here and work, or British ski instructors can no longer come here and work, and that's as a direct consequence of Brexit. So that's going to make my sort of summer recruitment program quite interesting. Still looking at ways that it might be possible to get the amazing team that I put together last year. Still, looking at ways that we might be able to get those guys to come here and work. I think there is a way. And I expect probably that Swiss will change the law on that at some point, but it's affecting people all over the Alps. It's affecting people in Italy and France, and I guess it's a matter of time before the Swiss have some sort of bilateral agreement on people going backwards and forwards. But in effect, because of Brexit, because they're out of the EU, the priority from an employment point of view for a Swiss ski school has to go, Swiss people, European people, and then you have to have a really, really good reason to have people from what they call a third country, in effect, so that lumps the Brits in effect with South Africans, Kiwis, Australians, etc. So interesting times for me, and it'll be an interesting summer. We've got a lot of work to get through. There's already loads of bookings and stuff going in the diary for next winter, so really got to start getting that sorted out fairly soon. I will touch a little bit more on that particular subject in the next interview that I've got. So I've already got interviews, which will be episode 36 and 37, which is a two-part interview with Peter Kuehl. And we talk a little, we touch on this whole Brexit thing when we have that interview. So you'll get that fairly shortly. In part two of this interview with John, we talk about sort of participation in snow sports at the grassroots level. We touch on technique for there's actually a really good section in this interview where we touch on technique for dry slope and sort of quirks of teaching and teaching on a dry slope and on what that surface is like to teach on. So I hope you enjoy this, and I will catch up with you episode 36, which will be, I'll get on that as soon as I can, because there's been a couple of months delay on this one. Enjoy the interview. tell me about these kids that you have coming in at the weekends. So you've got say 250 kids there, but how is it organic that you get them in the first place, or do you wait for them to come to you, or how do you attract people into skiing in a fairly, I say urban environment, because the northeast, it's pretty wild, right? There's a lot of it, but how do you get so many kids coming to you? Are you actively marketing to them, or is it just kind of a sort of organic grassroots kind of interest that comes?
We're kind of lucky here in one sense, because there is no other ski slopes around us. You probably have to travel about 2 hours either north or south or west of us to find the next sort of ski slope. So anybody that has sort of any interests in that sort of thing are going to automatically come to us without having to. So we are lucky in that sense. And we don't actively sort of advertise or promote too much for that grassroots club. It is quite organic. It kind of works a lot on word of mouth. We end up having a bit of a waiting list for people to get into certain sort of levels and things like that. It works very similar actually to kind of how a lot of places run swim lessons. So you're bringing the kids along when they've never done anything, just as a kind of a try, a taste, and then we just hook them up into the club and take them through. And we've got what we've actually had to do. Now we've actually put an age limit on, so now it runs. So we don't start any of our teaching sort of kids here until 4, just because the day is a little bit more physical than what it would necessarily be on snow. And then we have a cut off at 14 with the club, so we say you can stay in the club from 4 to 14. But then once you get to 14, we then we try and move them into, if they haven't already moved into some of the external clubs, we try and encourage them to move to those external clubs. Just simply so we can allow space to be there for us to kind of move people into. Where we do actively sort of work and try and advertise or try and kind of create footfall in the centres through the schools. We try and work quite heavily with schools around the area to try and encourage them to come out and do lessons and things like it at the centre. So that is probably more of a drive from that side. And then once we do get children obviously from who have been on trips with the school, who then go back home and speak to the parents and say, I like this, and then the parents bring them along and join them in the clubs. But I would say the majority of the kind of the promotion of those clubs is in centre. So the instructor will have a lesson with some kids. The kids enjoy it. They speak to the parents. We tell them about the club, and they join the club, and then we've probably got them for about 10 years.
But presumably, like, part of that though is, like you said, one, you've got a sort of semi-captive market because you've got, it's a long way to the Chill Factory or Hill End or wherever, right? And the other thing about that, I suppose, is just the sheer length of time that place has been there, right?
Yes.
So, it has its own kind of gravity to a certain extent because it's it's just been established such a long time.
Yeah, I mean, one of the ironic things is we actually have a lot more participation from outside of the Sunderland area.
Right.
So people travelling from Northumberland or maybe from slightly further south, Hartlepool and Darlington, things like that. We get a bigger proportion of our users who are outside of the Sunderland area. Almost like it's because it's on the doorstep. Well, it's always been there. Whereas people from further afield are kind of looking for something that's a little bit different outside of their area, maybe.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Presumably, though, also Sunderland's got a whole bunch of other stuff too that's like that kids could do, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, we're fighting, like most sort of sports in the UK, we'll fight against football and things like that, where it's the very sort of easy draw or easy. That's the sport that kind of takes the majority of people, including girls as well now, because female football has massively increased in participation and things like that. So that's the big sort of one that you kind of fight against. But but yeah, it's good. I mean, it's great to see. When you have a weekend and the hill is just full of kids of all different ages and abilities and levels, and when we've got, in the winter time we could have up to 20 instructors on the slope at different times, working with all these kids and lessons and things. So it's it's great to see.
Yeah, cool. That's so good. So good to hear that there's such a big scene going on. It's really awesome. Let's talk about dry slope skiing. You've just mentioned something. One, my ears have pricked up, and I want to know why. But so here we're often teaching. We'll do 2-year-olds. It's probably too young, but we can and have done that kind of initial on snow experience. But the big thing here in Switzerland is, if they're not on skis by 2, they're not going to be able to ski. It's like, fair enough, but that doesn't really hold any water at all. But it's just a thing that I think parents like to do, including me. By the way, I got suckered into that. But but why would you? You said something about the difference between the surface, the artificial slope surface. So why could you only do that from 4 years old onwards, or is that just a choice to do with the volume of numbers that you're getting? Yeah,
it's not that we couldn't do it with children any younger, but it is. We do find that the plastic slope or the dry slope is a little bit more physical. So to start with, on our at least on our nursery areas that we have, we don't lubricate the slope. So you have, on the main hill we lubricate it so it runs a little bit with a little bit less friction. We don't do that in the nursery slopes, simply so we can kind of control people's movements and things like that. So it becomes a little bit more difficult for them to slide to start with in terms of the size and the weight and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But also because we're in such a closed environment, such a small area, there's a lot of repetitive. So it's not like you can stand at the top of a fairly shallow sort of hill and ski for 10 minutes and have a bit of fun on the way down. It's a little bit more. It's a little bit more repetitive. You have to kind of go over some things a number of times, and where we are, our setup in terms of lift infrastructure is a little bit more difficult. We don't have a magic carpet. If we had a magic carpet, then we probably would take some kids who are a bit younger. But if you're going to kind of, almost carry a kid up or sidestep a kid up, or then eventually ask them to kind of use a rope tow in the beginner area where we are, all these things are quite physical. Mm-hmm. So in terms of us being able to deliver a quality sort of lesson and to get some sort of so for the child to get benefit from that lesson, we just feel here at our centre 4 is about the earliest that we feel comfortable delivering those sort of things, because we don't want to. What we want is we want the kids to enjoy that session. We want the parents to think that they're getting value for money. We want the whole package to work, so that they continue coming. And we just don't want. We never really want anybody to kind of go away and say, "No, that was just too hard. That wasn't enjoyable." The kids are crying and all that sort of stuff. Because then it's a hard sell to get them back in.
100%. Yeah. Well, for that very reason, I don't sell anything longer than a 1 hour lesson to kids that are that's exclusive product for under 5s, right? So we won't do it, despite the number of requests that we get, in winter, or it's half term, I need a half term booking. Have you got a 3 hour lesson for my 3-year-old? And I'm like, no, why would you do that?
Exactly.
I know you want to ski, I get it, but and I'm sorry if I'm offending. Well, in fact, I'm not sorry if I'm offending anyone. But if I'm, you've got a 3-year-old, why wouldn't you want to hang out with your kid and ski on the slope, right, with your kid? Why would you want to drop them off? I get that you want to ski, but in that case, find a different solution for your child, right?
It becomes almost, I guess, from some people's point of view, maybe it's a little bit like a.
Let's call it what it is. It's babysitting, right?
Babysitting, yeah. That's exactly the word I was looking for.
Yeah. And we are. I regard us as professional teachers, right? And so we're there to do a decent job for that hour. And frankly, most most 4-year-olds and 3-year-olds have only really got about 40 minutes in them anyway, and after that
Exactly.
you're kind of flapping around. But if you do a few sessions like that, or a series or a season's long worth of sessions like that, I find you make much better progress than having the kids in like a week of ski school, 3 hours a day, or lunch plus a sleep. Like, it's fine. There are people who give that product. I get it, right, and they're happy to do it, but it's not something that I want to be involved in.
We would much rather the children end the session, not wanting to stop, so happy
with a
and
positive experience, right?
Yeah, we don't want them to come off. We don't want them to be running off the slope crying. We want them to be coming off because we want them to be saying, "Oh, come, can we do that again?" Or, "I don't want to stop," or whatever. That's a much better place to finish a lesson than it is to kind of, be trying to pacify them from the fact that
I see it so much, like I see on the mountain in peak holiday times, I see one instructor trying to juggle, they got a full morning session with like 8 3-year-olds, and you're just like, you're not getting anything done here. Like, little Johnny over there needs the loo, so you've all got to go to the loo.
Exactly.
Little Johnny over there is crying. You've got one at the bottom of the slope, making a snowman. You've got 2 kids over here. One's on the floor. One's falling off the gadget carpet. I'm like, who's paying for this? Really,
Exactly.
like, as a product? All we've got to do is hang around for 20 minutes, and you'll see just how bad that product is. It's awful. It really winds me up to see that, because obviously someone's paid good money for that, and it's hard. It's not fair on the instructor. It's not fair on the kid. The only person who really benefits is the parent, I suppose, who gets to go and ski for 3 hours on their own. But
and that can be the only the only benefit that comes from that situation.
Yeah. I don't think I'm being controversial. It's just my opinion, and if you don't like it, I get it. I get why people would want to have 3 hours to themselves, but wouldn't it be nice, like, to get your kid some tuition and then go skiing with your kid? I love going skiing with my daughter. I think it's brilliant. I'm not going as fast as I want to go, for sure. Well, in fact, most of the time I am, actually. But it's fine by me. I don't mind pootling around in the basic parallel. It's fine. But that's part of it, isn't it? It's part of having a child, that you want to spend some time with them and go skiing with them. Like, you work the whole of the rest of the year for the 51 other weeks that you're not there on holiday with your child. It's weird. I don't get it. I don't get it. Now, there you go. It's me being preachy. It's easy for me.
That's it.
What I was going to say to you, so it's a question of the. No, let me take you to a different bit of this same question.
Okay.
Talk to me about what dry slope is. So for those people who are lucky enough never to have seen one, or skied on snow their whole life, like, what is it made out of? What are you skiing on? Like, what is the surface?
Okay, so there's a few different sort of surfaces that are available and different slopes have. The one that we have here is a Dendex surface. So basically, if you imagine the bristles of a toothbrush, but much more coarse and longer, obviously. Yeah. That's kind of and it's made up of small diamonds. So you buy it's an interwoven number of mats. So the mats come in about a 1 by 1.5 meter sort of size, and they're all tied together. And so you imagine you've got this upturned nylon toothbrush, basically, and that's what you ski. That's what you ski on. But it's actually, it sounds ridiculous, but it performs pretty good, really. And if you say the level of what people actually ski on this stuff, it's quite. And it lasts. The thing is, we 365 days a year, no matter what there is, it doesn't stop us. You can skate all the time. It's always there. It's a great sort of product, for developing skiing. You can't get away with. You can't. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, like, Dave Riding, it was all right for Dave Riding, right? So didn't hold him back. No, exactly. So what I wanted to say or ask you, so then the frictional properties of that surface, right? How does it? You spend? I know you spend a fair amount of time out here, on alpine snow as well. Like, how does it compare? Would you say it's slower, faster? Is it more consistent? Is it the same consistency all the way down? Do you get different consistencies within what is essentially supposed to be the same surface? How does that go?
So even though it's an artificial surface, Dave, it does change depending on what the weather is or what the kind of conditions are.
Okay.
So if you take our main hill, for example, it's 160 metres long.
Right.
And we have a mist system on that. So we use the mist system to try and make it a consistent sort of, to make it as consistent as possible to ski on, and also to make to reduce the friction that builds up on the pit. But if you get a windy day and the mist is getting blown off the slope, then it could be running considerably slower. If you get a really, really hot day, and lots of people kind of, to tell you this, who ski in the summer, you can almost smell the bases of the skis starting to warm up, and starting to bubble underneath. And then if you get a day where it's very cold, or it drops and it's a wet day, or it's there's snow on the slope, or an icy day, then it obviously runs a lot faster again. In terms of, I guess, the sensation, the closest thing that we can what we try to explain to people, it's a bit like skiing on ice very slowly. So the grip that you get is a bit like skiing on quite hard, packed or icy sort of conditions. But you don't have that instant sort of acceleration, if that makes sense. So that's a kind of a good way of describing how it kind of performs.
Okay.
But that's also why it's such a great learning tool.
Because it's consistent.
Because you can't cheat on the plastic. You can't get away with anything. You have to be extremely precise with the kind of the movements that you make, or the kind of the pressure that you're managing, or to be able to kind of, if you're going to perform at a high level. There's just no way of kind of cheating. So when you do finally get back onto skiing on snow, you're so much more prepared, or you're so much better than what you would potentially be if you didn't do that sort of practice in between.
That was. I do remember that being being my experience. And I also say this to groups of kids that we have coming out here, who've done. So we have a group that comes out from the UK. They come out from northeast London, and they do some practicing. I can't remember exactly where it is that they go. Be somewhere around that area. I can't remember exactly where. It's a dry slope, and they you say, they ask you the question, what's it like skiing real snow? It's like, well, compared to what you're used to, actually it's easier. And so when they put the skis on for the first time and they're kind of just feeling their way, it's like, oh, actually, this is really easy. And it gives them a lot of confidence to go on, because I think you probably, with real snow, you can get away with, a little bit of kind of imprecision here and there. But not so much on the dry slope, right? Like, it really teaches you to be. I suppose what I'm saying is, though, if you've got like a consistency of response from the surface, and that surface is always going to give you the same thing, then you can be really, really precise in your movements, right? Like, you can trust the surface, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. It will perform. You won't have the differences in sort of icy sort of conditions at the top of the hill and slush by the time you get down the bottom of the valley. You're never going to get that, and obviously we don't have the altitude or the the kind of the vertical drop, but you are going to get the same. Your skis will perform the same at the top of the hill as what they will perform at the bottom of the hill. The matting won't change. So as long as you kind of, like you say, you just have to kind of tweak the kind of your technique a little bit to allow you to be able to perform, and you've just got to be a little bit more sensitive, I guess, than what you would what you would need to be when you're on snow.
When you're skiing on that kind of surface, does it support the same kind of like edge angles? Do you get people making like crazy angles, or is it are the skis a bit more underneath you, or you know, do the brushes on the Dendex support big pressure movements?
So the will support, and if you see some of the kids who are kind of racing on the race scene, these kids are skiing at a phenomenal sort of level, and you can't create sort of big edge angles. What you will find is, and if you want somebody to tune your skis, get some race kids from the UK to tune your skis, because they will be able to make your skis sharper than anything that you've ever seen in your life. Because if they're not super sharp, then it won't work. So you've got to be able to look after your equipment as well if you want it to perform, or if you want it to that high level, shall we say. So yeah, it is possible. You'll probably find that the general public, shall we say, probably ski with the feet underneath them a little bit more, a little bit more sort of possibly tentative, because they don't feel that the support is there, because the bristles will only take so much before they want to break away. And like I say, if you don't have that extremely sort of well-serviced pair of skis, you're not going to get that sort of performance. But it is possible. It is possible to kind of, to create sort of large sort of ski angles and things like that.
That's cool. Because Phil was saying to me that there were a few tips and tricks and some crazy stuff that the kids were doing with their edge angles that you wouldn't get away with on snow. When I spoke to Phil about this, I'm not sure exactly what the specifics were of it, but he was saying they were doing some absolutely.
I mean, like I say, the kids will. The guys who are selling skis love the dry ski, the dry slope scene, because they sharpen the edges so often. Kids go through 2-3 pairs of skis in a season. All right. Easy. And they'll take a normal sort of race, sort of a club night here when we have a race club on. They'll probably ski for 45 minutes, and then they'll sharpen the skis again, ski for another 45 minutes. They would never go through it. Or they'd have 2 pairs of skis, so they'd have a sharp pair, and then they'd swap them for the next sharp pair.
Oh, wow. Is that because of the bristles are dulling the edges, or because they've got them too sharp and they lose the sharpness quite quickly?
The surface dull the edges, so it dulls them right out. So where you may sharpen your skis, say when you're on snow, if you're doing a camp or something like that, you'd be doing them every half hour to 45 minutes, maybe something like that on the dry ski slope.
Wow, that's crazy.
Again, if you want to perform at that sort of high level.
Yeah. Oh wow, that's really cool.
And then like you say, there are some sort of tricks and things, and we don't really encourage. But what you'll find is as the kids get a bit older, they'll start to ceramic the edges as well. So they'll run the ceramic sort of edging tool down the edge, and it puts almost a hook on the onto the edge. So it completely grips. It's why we don't encourage it with our younger kids is because it's very difficult to make any adjustments to kind of maybe steer the ski, or to you just have, if you're just going to completely rail the ski, it'll run like it's on rails. But you can use a ceramic to put this little hook on, which kind of grips the mat even more.
Wow. But presumably that makes it very, very hard to make any kind of rotational skidding movement.
Absolutely, yeah. So unless you're 100% bang on line, it's very difficult then to kind of make those adjustments or make those kind of changes during a run.
Wow, that sounds wild. I'd love to know more about the beginner area.
Yeah.
Right. So we have you were saying earlier that I don't know how many places have this sort of mythical ideal beginner slope. I know 2 that would work quite well. There's one in Châtel in France, which is a long kind of perfect gradient, like long, not that wide actually, but it's a really cool place. Oh, you still there? Hello?
Yeah, I'm there. I lost you for a second.
Oh, that's all right.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm with you. Can you hear me?
Okay, you got me, yeah.
Yeah? Okay, good.
I can, yes.
No, I know of a couple of places that have got this sort of mythical kind of perfect beginner slope. So there's one in Châtel, but it's not that wide, but it's a great gradient, and it's got a perfect gradient, not too fast, perfect for learning how to ski, and it's served by a magic carpet. in a tunnel, so you don't even get too cold on the way up. In April, you boil in that tunnel. But I know another place that is so, for example, in Nenda, in a place called Sivier, they've got a very, very gentle green/blue run that's served by a chairlift. It's like 7Ks long. You could learn to ski in a day on that, no problem at all. But in most places there are floors with like the beginner setup. For example, where we are, you'd probably start your climb off in, say, Morjan, where there's a magic carpet, but that run is, if anything, it's like 20-25 meters long, right? So it's not very long. And then the next stage up is served by a T-bar, and then that slope itself is kind of got some horrible kind of bumps and steep bits in it. And then the third progression is terrible, so we normally take clients to a different resort after that, and so on and so forth. So we're kind of working within the limitations of what the resort gives you. And in most places, I think the beginner areas are quite underserved. Certainly that's my experience around here. But so your beginner area, you said you don't missed it because you don't want it to run too fast. Yeah. But is it also served by a rope toe or a magic? You said it wasn't. You haven't got a magic carpet.
No, it has a rope toe. And obviously, a lot of the infrastructure that we have is just because historically that was what was built.
Yeah.
And then obviously financial sort of restraints. Ideally, I would stick magic carpet in tomorrow, and that would revolutionise what we could do in terms of teaching children and getting them involved and things like that.
Why don't you? Why won't they make that? Well, I don't want to throw your bosses under the bus, but is a magic carpet hugely expensive?
I believe about £1,000 a metre.
No way.
Yeah, I believe so.
Wow.
So
okay,
we'd need probably like it's not a huge amount of money in the grand scheme of things, but we'd probably need about 30 metre sort of magic carpet on the area that we're on.
Okay, so it's a fairly significant investment.
So it's a big outlay. And the company, to be fair, there wouldn't be in it, if we have another couple of years where we were doing well, which we were before last year, those conversations are they'd be encouraged. You'd stick a little sort of profit and loss sort of sheet together and see what the return would be, and if it came out, they would be willing to kind of invest in those sort of things. But that's all been knocked back a little. Those sort of investments have been knocked back, obviously, because of the last sort of financial year that everybody's had. But one of the going back to kind of what you're saying, and it's really surprising, isn't it, that at the most important stage of skiing, very, very few places have a specific or a beginner area which suits the need.
Yeah.
It's quite disappointing. And also ski instruction, so the pathway in terms of ski instructors and the kind of the path that associations put together are almost based around having an ideal area to teach these things in. So the development of, say, from straight running into plough turning, into basic swing, are all developed around having this ideal, perfect area to be able to teach that on. And I'm yet to find it.
And do you know the other bit that really winds me up about out here is that they don't open up the beginner. So it'll come like mid-December here, and then they'll open, the main lifts, the blue, maybe a blue slope. All the red slopes will open up first, but they only get the beginner stuff open last. Like every single year. And this year I might see if I can write to someone about it, because it drives me bananas, because the people who want to get going with skiing earliest are the new people at it. They're like, when can we start? They'll start in December 6th or December 1st or whatever if they could, but they can't also because they're not serviced by anything.
They're also the people that this is where the biggest spend is at the very beginning. When you need lessons, when you need to kind of and yeah, I don't get it. I don't know why it's. I haven't actually been anywhere where, me personally, I've never been anywhere where they've actually developed an area which is suitable for the actual needs. You know, I've taught beginner lessons on outside of, you know, piece machine sheds, you know, down the in car parks and all that sort of thing. That's kind of where you get thrown in. It's terrible.
It is. They're big now this year into the Swiss have caught up with the idea of terrain-based learning. I saw that in their magazine lately, and they're making big plays about, you know, having like almost like a terrain park as a beginner park. We, you know, like banks and up, you know, bumps and all sorts of bits and pieces, and I'm like, I don't know anywhere near me that has got like either the ambition to do that, or secondly, you know, would even credit it. You know, the beginner area is just like an afterthought compared to the rest of the place. It's very strange.
It is a strange one. But in terms of, again, going back, to your original question, in terms of our beginner area, so we have 3 separate slopes. So what we call our nursery slope. We have a slope in the middle, which we generally keep for snowboarding lessons, because it kind of works easier that way. And then with me a hill. The nursery hill is probably about maybe 50 meters long, and about 30 meters wide. Okay. A kind of a consistent sort of gradient. All our hills have a run-out area, so they all end in an uphill sort of slope, so that you can naturally come to a stop without having to be able to control your own speed.
That's cool.
Which is also a big sort of bonus. Yeah. One of the issues you get with dry ski slope is, though, even if you were to miss it or not, the friction, they all have to be steeper than what you would normally want. Yes,
I've seen that. And I also seen that indoors at Hemel. Their beginner slope is really steep. I presume that's just a hangover from the old slope that used to be there in the dry slope days. Because I remember it being reasonably steep. But you're right, you've got more friction, right? So it's not going to be at the, I don't know, what angle is your beginner slope at? Do you know?
I don't know exactly. I think our main hill is probably round about between 16 and 18 degrees, something like that. Which doesn't sound too much, but if you were to cover our main hill in snow, you know, it would be a decent red run, you know? Yeah. And so the beginner hill's probably not too far off it, really. We're probably round about 15 degrees, I would think.
But you don't missed it.
No, we don't. But what we find is, because of the fact that it's slightly, because it has to be steeper. Yeah. It kind of affects how you kind of stand on your skis. You know, if you are gonna follow the actual, you know, the pathways that sort of you know, the instructor sort of, you know, the development pathways, shall we say, to move from straight running into plough. When you start ploughing on a fairly steep hill, you're in a completely different position to what you would be if you were doing it on a fairly gentle sort of ideal beginner area, shall we say.
What effects does that create? Like, are people generally ending up a bit more in the back seat because they're a bit more fearful, or?
I think you do get them. I don't think you get them any more than what I think. That's almost like an inbuilt sort of this feeling of being on the back seat. You know, there's you find people moving the back seat. I think that's almost inbuilt naturally. You just find that maybe when you come to the steering sort of elements. So when you're starting to move from straight running or plough glide into a sort of a plough turning and things like that. It tends to affect where the inside leg would be. You know, if you imagine if you're on a steep hill and it's a little bit more. You kind of have to work a little bit more at it. It becomes a little bit more difficult for people to make these turns. Me personally, that's how I feel.
Yeah, presumably they feel like they've got one leg up in the air a little bit.
Yeah, a bit, and I guess once you get through it, it's probably an advantage later on. Yeah. But at that early stage, you just have to kind of be a little bit more aware of the fact that you are on a steeper hill than what you might actually like them to be at that stage of the development.
Yeah, that's interesting. Does that but you don't see that doesn't go all the way through? So the kids that you teach that go through the club, it doesn't seem to affect them in the long term.
No, I don't think it does. But I think you use what you've got, don't you? So you
you adapt, right? Yeah.
So you adapt the teaching that you have to kind of suit the area that you're in. It's just that it's not an ideal. It's not the ideal, but there's not really a lot you can do with it, unfortunately.
No, but I mean, I think every area has its quirks, right? You know,
Exactly.
we have the same thing. Like the slope 3 essentially at Morjan is it's really steep. You know, like and you come off the top. There's a little plateau, then there's a drop, and it scares people to death. You know, people freeze at the top of that. I'm just like, oh god, like why didn't they just take a bulldozer to this in the summer and flatten it off? Like it wouldn't take that much work, but presumably it would. You know, there'd be the Green Lobby would be in it out if I had my way, flattening off slopes and filling in holes and all sorts of bits and pieces.
Yeah, that's another thing that you find in places though. They'll stick a beginner area somewhere up a hill.
Yeah.
So you've got to get to it, and then you've got to get back from it.
Yeah.
And you think, well, the slope's quite nice, but how am I going to get home?
No.
You know? So
Exactly.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm with you. Tell me, I've got a couple more questions. I know I'm conscious that we've been going for quite a long time. You're
That's okay.
A very engaging interview. What are the kids when they're racing or they're skiing generally on the slope? Are they using a regular alpine kind of ski wax, or are there specific stuff for the artificial surface?
Yeah, it is a snow wax that they use. It is the same stuff that you could buy and use anywhere else, but they tend to use a very, very cold wax, so a very hard wax.
Right.
And what they do is they'll melt it on and melt it and put numerous layers of it on. Try and get it as smooth as possible.
Yeah.
But don't scrape, polish it off.
Oh right.
So they let that the wax harden and then polish it off by hand, or if you're lucky enough to have one of those brushes, brushes, so that you get a really polished sort of surface on it. But yeah, leave the wax on.
Wow. Okay.
And then again, Phil's probably explained this to you as well and things like that. But when it comes to race day, all sorts of weird and wonderful sort of lubricants get put on skis. Mr. Sheen was a big one on the day, or Back to Black that used to put on your tyres and things like that. All sorts of stuff. You stand at the top of a race gate and it'll just be full of this gunk of jelly or whatever they've been sliding on the skis and stuff. They put anything on just to go quick.
Amazing. Yeah. The only time that ever happens to me is when I pull the skis off the top of the car and like early in the season, and then you realise you haven't scraped your skis, and then you're that guy like in the car park who's trying to do it with like a credit card.
Yeah.
It happens to me so often, like in December.
We've had kids when we take them away on snow camps and things, and they've probably never skied a lot on snow, and then they're skiing around and they're not moving, and you think, well, what's wrong? Well, nothing. And you think, well, you haven't scraped your skis. And they're like, well, why should I scrape my skis? It changes you on snow now. You got to scrape them all.
Yeah, with you. What happens? This is probably a silly question, but I'm gonna ask it anyway because I've got to be the one that does it. But what happens when it snows? Like it must snow in Sunderland. So presumably the slope stays open, but like everyone adapts, I'm guessing. But does it? The Dendex surface supports snow, right? And I guess you have times when you can have quite a lot of snow on there, right? And everyone's skiing regular snow.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, so we've had a couple of times where we've had some seasons where you make it, I say good seasons, 2 or 3 weeks of snow. And we don't need a huge amount of snow for it to run really well. So if you imagine the bristle probably being around 3 centimeters deep, something like that.
Yeah.
So once you've filled that hole in the middle, the gap, then it runs just like it's like on snow, and then the ski obviously performs like it's on snow, opposed to being like it's on the plastic.
Yeah.
And then we're kind of lucky, I guess, with the slope that we have. If we get enough snow, then you can ski off to the side a little bit. We have some grass areas, and we have some sort of you can kind of it expands the area that we've got to to ski in, so it lets us kind of ski around a bit more. So yeah, it's good, and it lasts as well because again, once it's packed into those diamonds, once the snow's packed in there, it's protected a little bit, so it does tend to stay on the slope for a little bit longer.
How do you get those? They come pre-made, right? I'm guessing like those squares of the Dendex surface? Like, do you drill them into the floor, or like how do they stay in?
No. So if you imagine you'd have a hill, and then on that hill you'd vertically run anchor wires. So big peg hand knocking at the floor with a wire running the full length of the hill.
Yeah.
And then all the mats are wired together. So you get these, it's a wire with two loops on the end.
Yeah.
You wrap it around, you put on your, we call them hurdy-gurdy, I don't actually know what its real name is, and you spin it around until it makes a twist. And then the whole hill is held together with this twisted wire.
It's just like an enormous sort of jigsaw kind of thing.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Huh. How about that?
Yeah.
Because I've seen some video from the slope, right, and some of it's like, it looks really cool because I think some of it's white, like there's a few odd patches of different colours and things like that. It's really, really like quite an impressive thing to look at.
Yeah, it's the most awful job in the world. Changing mats and things like that. So it's an ongoing process. I mean, we're quite good here. We have a part of the deal with the company and the council that still own the facility and the company that run it. We have a deal that they still provide funding for the matting, so we're constantly trying to kind of upgrade the matting all the time.
Yeah.
But it's such a dirty, smelly job because obviously in the summertime, what happens is you get a lot of moss or vegetation that grows between the gaps, and then so when you're pulling it off, and summertime isn't the most fun on the dry skis when you're changing mats. That's when all the ski instructors disappear.
Yeah. I can well imagine. I can well imagine. Oh man, John, I could talk to you forever, but like we've been going for an hour and a bit now, like an hour and a half. So
that's okay. No problem.
I want to thank you so much for like taking the time to chat and giving me this real education on like the dry slope world.
You're very welcome.
Where can people find you if they want to ski, or they got aspiring skiers, or they just want to get in touch with you? Like where's the best way to get in touch with you? Yeah, so we have we're called Silksworth Sports Complex. So the company's Everyone Active, Silksworth Sports Complex. If you look it up online, you'll be able to find that. It's not the best website in the world, but it's got contact numbers on there. So the best thing to do is just use one of those contact numbers and get in touch with us. Okay.
If anybody wants to speak to me personally, I'm just on Facebook as John Greenwood. They're more than happy to send me a message through if they want to speak to that. I'm quite happy to kind of pass on all the details if they need them.
Fantastic. All right. Brilliant. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. It's been absolutely brilliant talking to you.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much for having me on.